What's up, boys? It's Tim here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Sean Strickland's big win last night and kind of some of the reactions and potential storylines that can now happen. Um, I'd really appreciate if you liked the video or subscribed to the channel as well. I'd really appreciate that. But let's talk about like the actual fight at first. I did a video on this, and I was going back and forth like all week. On the card overall, I went like 10 of 15 on picks. So got some right, got some wrong. On this one, I was going back and forth earlier in the week. I was picking Fluffy. I ended up picking Strickland, but I was basically like 50-50, like on my actual breakdowns, which I have a link of those in the description. But I ended up going with them, but I didn't like know fully what was going to happen. I didn't think this was going to be a close fight, though. I thought someone would dominate, and I thought like it would either be Strickland doing what he did or Hernandez, Strickland maybe not being able to deal with the wrestling and Hernandez dominating. But ultimately, what made me think Strickland, regardless of who I was going to pick, like I really thought Strickland was a different test for Fluffy. Like even if Fluffy would have ended up winning, because like I said, Fluffy really thrives with his wrestling when he tires people out. And he's had a lot of opponents he's been able to do that against. If you look at Shabazian, Kopylov, Pereira, Delidze, all these guys break. And the issue is like round one, he was like, usually Fluffy does lose early, like because he can't take people down right away because his actual wrestling isn't elite. He's more reliant on pace. And the issue is he'll sometimes pressure box people to kind of get him tired, and he has to just survive, and then they'll get tired and he can kind of wear them down. But Strickland he doesn't tire. So like you're basically having to beat a fresh Strickland. And so Fluffy was kind of forced to box. And I see a lot of people saying like, why didn't Fluffy shoot more takedowns? You can't always look at numbers. Like I'm a big number guy, if anyone knows me, but even in round three, Fluffy was credited with no takedown attempts. And if you look, like he tried clinching Strickland up, and that's usually what Fluffy does. He backs people up against the cage, and then he starts working his takedowns. But Strickland was always digging underhooks and pivoting, so there weren't like as many opportunities. And a lot of the time, he gets people in those positions when they tire out. And so that the thing is, like Strickland had the cardio and the defensive grappling, but then he also had the striking to put him away. And it was a brilliant performance by Sean. I did think this iteration of the fight could play out, and it did. And like shit can happen in this sport, though. It doesn't always go like the way you think, and it can be very unpredictable. But I thought Strickland looked really good. We've seen flashes of his defensive grappling for a while now, and there are whispers at his gym about like how guys like Magomed Ankalaev can't out wrestle him. So apparently those were true, because I know Fluffy didn't shoot a ton of takedowns, but just like you can tell, like the couple exchanges they had, it was going to be tough. And when they were clinching up, Strickland doesn't get put in those positions very easily either. So I believe Strickland's tough to grapple for sure. And I thought Strickland looked like good. I think he was a little tentative early throwing. I thought he won every round, and I think the judges did too. But the first round was close, and second round I thought he won a little cleaner, but they weren't like beatings. And then round three hurt him to the body, and then just put him away. I still think like he could have let his hands go a little more early, but I think he was kind of getting a feel for everything and getting like, when you're worried about takedowns more often, I think it was reasonable. So he was just kind of making sure he was ready for everything. So I thought he looked really good. And I still think Fluffy's very good. And I think Strickland is just the toughest matchup in the division for him. Like I think Chimaev would beat Fluffy as well, but it's just like this is the one guy who like doesn't tire and it's hard to grapple. And so Fluffy's gonna look bad in a matchup like that. And so I still think Fluffy beats just about every other middleweight, but he's going to look bad against a guy like Strickland. And I had a hunch, but I wasn't sure. But Strickland proved out everyone who was on him that he was the right call. So yeah, and like I'm really interested. I mean, if you haven't been, I've had friends who do not watch UFC texting me about like the Strickland press conference because he's just like, just being Strickland. But the thing is, like, I remember watching that presser earlier this week without it before it even blew up, and I didn't even think anything of it because we're all so used to Strickland. Like, that's just how he talks. But now that they're in the Paramount era, that stuff can hit the mainstream media and casual fans a little more, or non-casual fans, just like people who aren't even really fans in general. But my buddies were texting me like, did you see what Strickland said? And I'm like, oh yeah, I mean, that's just who he is, But a couple things I want to talk about is like, one, I think Strickland deserves a title shot. He was apparently injured. I was talking to James Lynch, who's a really good, I really like him as an MMA journalist, and he was telling me how like he like had proof and like was shown how Strickland actually had a really bad injury going into that Dricus du Plessis second fight. And I kind of believe it because Strickland it was very competitive the first fight. And I actually thought Strickland had an argument to win. And then he looked himself versus Costa, and then he just didn't let his hands go in that second fight. And it kind of makes sense if he had an injury. So that could have happened. But he came back with a huge win against Fluffy, who's been running over everyone. And I think he deserves a title shot against Chimaev. And I think their backstory makes this interesting. And just like before I go into the backstory, I think I love these guys, Chimaev and Strickland, have just been guys I've always liked, and I played them a lot. So I don't have a favorite here. Like, I really like both of them as just like their skills. And I think they're funny characters as well in their own different ways. But I feel like out of anyone, and I've been playing, I played Chimaev versus Whitaker and all these other guys. I think out of anyone in the division, if anyone can beat Chimaev, it's Strickland. I don't think no one else I don't think has much of a chance. Like, anyone could, stuff happens in MMA. Like, anyone could have like a 5% chance or something by just catching Chimaev on the way in or something. But I think if anyone just like can beat him consistently, it could be Strickland because he doesn't get tired. And if he could just survive that early storm against Chimaev, and all of a sudden Chimaev is tired and can't land takedowns anymore, and they're on the feet, Strickland could probably beat him up. It's just that initial storm is going to be a hell of a storm, right? That's kind of the way I feel. But I think if Strickland just survives, I think he can win that fight. I don't think a lot of other people are capable of surviving, or even if they survive, they can put him away. Like, we saw Chimaev could still wrestle for 25 minutes against Dricus du Plessis. But I think if anyone can do it, it's Strickland. I think he's a better boxer. He has better cardio than Chimaev for sure. I think everyone, even if they're on Chimaev, would agree with that. But I also think like, I think Strickland would get taken down in that matchup, but I don't think Chimaev would have to work for them. I'm torn, man. I think Strickland has a legitimate chance. And like, looking here, Strickland claims he made Chimaev quit. Like, so they have a background. And from what I've heard and kind of like the stories seen, that like Chimaev would have a good round or so and would maybe get Sean, but like the times he didn't get him, Strickland would probably beat him up. And I'd imagine that's what happened. And he said he made Chimaev like quit in training. So there's already some hype. Thing is, I thought they were like friends for a while, but I guess, I feel like Strickland's not actually a mean guy. Like, he's crazy, but he was talking shit on Fluffy. And then after, you could tell he likes Fluffy. I think it would be the same way here. Yeah. But yeah, anyway. Yeah, I'm like reading it. So they had some back and forths, but it's interesting. I legitimately am very interested in the matchup. And so like he was claiming that in the press conference, and then he started talking about like Aspen Ladd getting groomed by her coach or something, and the UFC cut him off because he's like a liability at this. You can tell like Dana probably likes Strickland, but it's like, oh my God, this guy's a fucking headache. Which I kind of understand both sides, but Strickland, I mean, him versus Chimaev on the White House card would be the fight to make. It would be incredible. It'd be a really intriguing matchup. And it would be exciting because, like, either Chimaev is going to get him out of there quick, or Strickland just finishing Chimaev could happen on the White House card. That would be fucking amazing. Like, such a good matchup. But then the buildup would be insane. But I have a feeling that the UFC doesn't want to deal with him during the White House card. Like, and I actually don't blame it. Like, imagine Dana having to deal with all this new shit for that card. And then you have Strickland calling people like, you know, puss, like just doing his thing, you know, calling people retarded and shit. So, and having to deal with that. And, you know, mainstream media will be there. So I totally get it. I hope he's on there. But I understand from their perspective of being like, I don't feel like fucking dealing with this. So let me know what you think. Really good performance by him. I'm really intrigued by the Chimaev matchup, and I hope it happens at the White House. I have a feeling it's not going to. I don't think they're going to want to deal with Strickland on that card, but let me know your thoughts. Thank you, boys.